Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today because we are going to talk about a really important topic. How do you teach your kids to advocate for social justice issues? When we are teaching our kids lessons about important topics that tend to marginalize people, like racism, gender equality, religious and cultural differences, or even socioeconomic status, then those lessons need to be rooted in empathy. I believe that all humans have great capability to empathize, but empathy as a skill should be explicitly taught and practiced. So in this video, I'm going to teach you actionable strategies that you can use today to turn any book into a rich social justice discussion. And in doing so, I'm going to use this book by Jacqueline Woodson called The Day You Begin. One way to begin the conversation about social justice is to analyze a book through the lens of its setting. Setting means the time period or the location where the story is taking place. So if your book is obviously historical fiction, consider that historical time period and ask your child, what do they think were the political, social, and economic forces during that time that are affecting the main character? Who was in power? Who was the president? What were some issues that were going on during that time that likely made life for the main character really difficult? If you're reading a book like The Day You Begin, there is no clear historical time period. This story could have taken place today, could have taken place 50 years ago. However, this book does take place during a certain time of year, and that is the beginning of the school year. And I can tell because the teacher asks the students questions about what they did over the summer. And there is a student in the book who talks about how he has recently moved to the United States from another country. Furthermore, the story takes place in a school. It is likely that your child has experienced the first day of school blues. So ask your child what it may feel like if a teacher asks a question on the first day and everybody is required to answer. How could that possibly make somebody nervous, especially someone who has moved from another country and is new to the school? What this does is it teaches kids that the environment is set up in a way that allows certain people to feel more comfortable and be at an advantage compared to other people. And that is exactly what systemic racism is. The next strategy is to discuss the characters in a book. If you are choosing a high quality text that talks about these important issues, you will likely encounter 4 types of characters. One person who is perpetuating the negative idea. That's the person who's straight up being mean to the main character. You'll also have the bystanders who do nothing. That will actually be most of the characters in the book. You will also have the victim, the person who's dealing with the negative emotions, and you'll have that person or situation that finally advocates for that main character and helps turn things around. So with your child, identify those 4 people in your book and talk about why. The big question is why here. Why do each of those people behave or speak the way that they do? And then bring it all back to empathy. How do all of those characters' actions and behaviors affect the main character's emotions? So in this book, I've turned to this page where this girl is sitting all by herself eating her lunch, and all of these students are looking at her because they feel like her lunch is strange and pretty unfamiliar. And in this picture, you can see that this girl is actively talking, assumingly about that girl, but the rest of these kids are just staring and they're not quite doing anything. They're not going to spend time with her, and they're not telling this girl that she shouldn't be talking about her. So I would ask my child, why are these kids behaving the way they do, and why do they feel like her lunch is unfamiliar, and so unfamiliar that they need to be talking about it and staring at her? And interestingly enough, on the next page, this girl has a friend, and the friend asks her, what's in there anyway? So while this friend's words are not actively negative, we can talk about the negative undertones that make this girl feel like she's an outsider. It's really important to analyze these characters and go beyond just labeling the character traits and saying things like, this character's mean, this character's sad, this character's angry, and really digging deep into the motive behind the character's actions and explaining truly why people in the book are behaving the way that they are. That again builds empathy. The next strategy is to discuss the conflict. Specifically ask questions about where this conflict is coming from. Is it coming from another character, or is it more implicit within society's expectations? And that's the example I'm going to show you. So in The Day You Begin on this page, the teacher has just asked the students what they did over the summer. And all of these kids are talking about all the different places that they traveled to. And as they're speaking, this girl is feeling a little self-conscious because she realizes that she didn't go anywhere over the summer. She stayed at home, she took care of her sister, and she did not travel. So in that situation, she's feeling a lot of internal conflict, but nobody is actively causing that conflict. It's more implicit within the society, or in this case, the classroom's culture or the classroom's expectations. And it stems from the teacher's initial question. And if the conflict isn't caused by a specific character, but rather a setting, then you can discuss how the culture of that environment is further marginalizing the character. The next strategy is to analyze the plot of the book, and I'm talking about mainly the turning point, otherwise known as the climax. This is usually the part in the story where the main character learns something or the attitudes of the characters change. Talk with your child about why those attitudes changed and what gave the main character the strength to finally speak up. Because if your child can identify that turning point and that point of action in a book, then it is more likely to set them up to actually take action and make some change happen in the real world. So the turning point in this book is when this girl speaks up. She had the strength to finally speak about her experience with confidence. And because of that confidence, on the next page, the boy who initially feels like an outsider also speaks up, and they connect over a similarity that they have. So a question I would ask a child is, how is this girl's confidence helping this boy to speak up? And therefore, how can our strengths help other people so that we can stand together and make a difference? The next strategy is to analyze the theme of the story. The theme is simply the lesson learned from that story, and it's typically stated as a complete sentence. For example, in this book, I would say that the theme would be something like, when you speak up confidently about your experiences, you connect with other people. If you can't come up with the one-sentence theme for your story, think instead about what the topic of your story is. So the topics of this book would be possibly comparisons or confidence. So if you can isolate with a few words what the book is actually about, then you can start having discussions about the lessons that the characters are learning. So if this book is about comparison, what does this girl learn about comparing herself to others? If the book is about standing up for what you believe in, what does this girl learn about standing up for herself? If you look back to the turning point of the story, that is typically where the main character and other characters in the book learn the lesson of the story. So if you look back to the turning point, it's when this girl spoke up about her experience, and at that moment, this boy also spoke up too. And that is exactly where the lesson of sharing your story so that you can connect with other people is learned. Questions that you should ask when you are considering the theme of the story is, how did the main character learn this theme? And specifically, how is it going to affect the future actions of other kids in the book or the main character? And then bring it back to your own life and talk about how the lesson learned by the characters in the book has affected your own life, or how you have experienced a similar situation. Again, bringing it back to empathy and talking about how we can take these lessons and actually apply them to our daily actions is where there's value in reading books like this. The next strategy is one of my favorites, and that is to consider the symbols in the story. Specifically, you should look for position and size of the different characters and objects in the book, along with natural elements. So for example, in The Day You Begin, on this first page, this girl is so much bigger than the way these other characters are depicted. This could symbolize that she feels like she is big and the center of everybody's negative attention. As you can see, he's looking pretty dejected here, but he looks into the water and sees his own reflection. And here, in the reflection, he's a completely different person. In this specific book, on almost every page, the main character who is marginalized is often shown very far away from the other students. And that is pretty much true on every page until the very end, when finally these two children find something in common. Even young children can talk about what these symbols represent and, more importantly, how they show visually how the main character is feeling. So I hope these strategies help you lift the level of conversation that you're having with your kids with the books that you already have at home. One tip I will give you is that these talking points don't come spontaneously, so I highly suggest you preview the book before you read it with your child. And while I know that that takes extra time, I guarantee you it will make for a very rich and meaningful discussion. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you leave, please subscribe to my channel so that you will get notifications about videos in the future. I'll see you next time. Bye.